Hello and welcome to Game 3. So this is Game 3 of Art of War. We're halfway through now. This is the final day the final game, of Day 1, and I've been drawn against Highborn Elves. And if you've watched my first battle report from Art of War, you'll know that my opponent for this game is going to be Lucky Sixes from Proxy Table Gaming. I imagine if you're watching this video, then you'll have heard of them, but if not, then go out and check out their channel. There'll be a link in the description below. So I've met Lucky Sixes before. I met him at the English Championships in Stockport in April of 2019, and even back then I had been wanting to do battle reports for Ninth Age, and I told him as much at the time because he was also taking photos, and he was like, "Oh, that's great. Let me know when you've done your videos." And then I met him again almost a year after that in February of 2020. And I said again, I'm still planning on doing battle reports. And he was like, get on and do it then, mate. So here we go. Another year on, almost 2 years after I met him, I've finally got around to doing it. So Lucky Sixes, if you're watching this, it means that it's up on YouTube and we're finally here. Okay, so on with the lists. Here's my list. If you've watched Game 1, then I've go through it properly there. And you can pause the video and have a look through, or it'll be in the comments below. And here is Lucky Six's Highborn Elves list. So he's got a fairly standard competitive build for Highborn Elves. He's got a High Prince with the Sliver of the Blazing Dawn. He's got Queen's Companion, I think is an archery thing. I don't remember exactly what it does. He's got Moonlight Arrows, which I think is Strength 4 AP 1. Got Dragon Forged Armour for heavy armour and a 6 up Aegis, and then a 2 up Aegis against Flaming. Shield, a longbow, a spear, enchanted with the Sliver of the Blazing Dawn, which is 2 hits for each hit that he does, I think, and then some extra stuff. Protection of Dorak for +2 to his Aegis, and he's got Willow's Ward for an additional +1 armour. Then he's got a commander for his BSB, Master of the Conreg Tower, light armour, great weapon, and the Banner of Becalming. So that steals magic dice during each phase. Steal Veil tokens, that makes more sense. Okay, then he's got a mage on a young dragon. He's a Wizmaster of Pyromancy. He's got the Order of the Fiery Heart with Dragon Forged Armour, Shield, Demon's Bane for +2 armour against magical attacks, and Glittering Lacquer for hard target. Then for his core, he's got 25 Seaguard with full command and Navigator's Banner for distracting the first round of combat, and 30 Spears with full command with the War Banner of Rhymer for devastating charge +1 strength and +1 advance. Then in special, 2 lots of 6 Knights of Rhymer with musicians, 2 Giant Eagles for chaff, a Lion Chariot, and 15 Queen's Guard with spears and musician. So I can't remember who deployed first, but this is after my Vanguard. So I gave because I was scared of his shooting, because he's got pyromancy magic. He's got a big block of spears with bows. They're the Sea Guard, and then he's got his Queen's Guard as well. So I was worried about the bows, and because they're all elves and resilience 3, having strength 6 isn't going to help me at all against most things in this army besides the dragon and the chariots. So I decided to give my Hold Guardians Vanguard. So they shift all up, right up into the centre of the field, so I can start bearing down on his lines nice and early on. You'll notice that I wasn't sitting on top of the Spoils of War token there, but as I've noticed since the game, that was fine because I can't score in the first round, so I wouldn't have been able to pick up the counter even if I'd been sitting on it anyway. I think looking back as well, I could have done better with deploying my artillery in the forest on the right there, but we were playing Dawn Assault again, and that corner off to my right is where I can't deploy, so I was worried about deploying them over there and then getting flanked by a knight unit. So I deployed my side, right in the middle of the open instead, which obviously is far more sensible. My Seekers have vanguarded up there. I think we were counting that wall as impassable terrain, so they used that to shield their flank and they're just going to try and chase down the dragon. With my Dragon Seeker in there with multiple wounds too, I'm not scared of either the chariot or the dragon. And if I can catch either of them, then the Dragon Seeker will kill them, basically. So it's just a case of trying to pin them down and eat them, really. So on to turn 1. After another picture of God, there we are. And I think that base at the back is just to mark out the edge of his terrain more than anything. There's a blurry picture in there. So this is his turn 1. So he moves up one of his Knights of Rhymer units up onto Spoils of War token there to take that objective. He moves up one of his Eagles to chaff my Old Guardians from simply marching up another 10. Excuse me. To sit in front of his blocks and charge them next turn, so chaff me up and stop me from getting anywhere anytime soon. And on this side, his dragon shifts over slightly. He moves his Knights of Rhymer over as well. Again, conscious of a long charge from my dwarves. And the Lion Chariot moves out of line of sight and behind the impassable terrain, so I can't quite see him. And then both of his big blocks in the centre. Like the wussy pansy elves he is, he's shuffled away from my big combat block. And here's a couple of not particularly great photos of a rather fancy model that he's using as his young dragon. It really made a great centerpiece, and pictures definitely don't do it justice. Yet more photos of the same thing. So onto his magic phase, he puts Fireball on my cannon, thankfully only doing the 1 wound, leaving it with 4. Then he puts Altered Sight on the Queen's Guard, who are just about in range of my cannon, and so they kill it. I believe the Lothan Sea Guard, or just Sea Guard, they're not Lothan Sea Guard anymore, are they? The Sea Guard can see my dwarves in the centre, obviously, so they peel off 5 from the back of there. And we go on to my turn 2. So I move 1 unit of dwarves into the flank of the Knights of Rhymer on the right there. Hoping that he's going to not have anywhere to go, really. At most, he can just swift reform and then move backwards to get away from me. So I can probably chase him into the corner, is what I'm thinking. I reform my Hold Guardians to face the Knights as well, because I was worried about a flank charge from them. And I was hoping that I might be able to stop him from simply marching past me. I think in hindsight, I probably would have been better just charging the Eagle, killing the Eagle, and then doing a swift reform that way instead. But I'd moved my 2 Steam Copters to a point where they could shoot the Eagle, and I think that was what I was hoping to do instead. But again, hindsight is 2020. I would have been much better off just simply charging the Eagle, killing it, and then forming off of that. My King's unit, of course, wasn't scoring in the first turn, so they have to spend a turn shuffling over 3 inches to pick up the Spoils of War for next turn, so they can start then moving off towards the Elves. I move up my last unit of Clan Warriors on the left a little bit. Again, I don't particularly want to take a long charge from either the Knights of Rhymer or that dragon. So I'm being a little bit cautious before I go and pick up that token on the left. My Seekers and the Dragon Seeker show no such restraint, and I simply shift them forward. As they sit there, I think the dragon is in arc to charge me in the front. Not that he would do that, because that would be certain death for him. But it does most certainly leave the Lion Chariot in my flank. And I was hoping that that would tempt him into a flank charge. And then, before we got to combat, I had assumed that you could make way moves with characters, even if you get charged down the flank. Isn't the case. So that's bad news for my Seekers, but I don't know it yet. So with my magic, I managed to get Rune of Revocation off on Queen's Guard, so I dispel Altered Sight, and the next spell he tries to cast on it in the following turn will be automatically dispelled. That'll save me some dispel dice next turn. I managed to get Rune of Gleaming off on my Bolt Thrower, that's now my only ranged threat against his dragon, hoping to stop any long-range shots from his Queen's Guard and his Sea Guard from killing it. And then on to Highborn Elves turn 2. So, as I said earlier, I was tempting the Lion Chariot into my flank, hopefully so I could just shift my Dragon Seeker over and then kill it almost immediately after it does its impact hits. But it doesn't work out that way because you can't do that, unfortunately. So that punishes me for a couple of turns. So he's moved his eagle back into cover because he's done the chaff, but he's survived, so he's going to hide ready again for next turn. Those Knights of Roma have done exactly what I predicted. They've done a swift reform and then run off, try and keep themselves safe from my dwarves. Of course, he's much faster than me, even if he is just advancing rather than marching. And with my Seekers pinned down for now, his Knights of Rima move on to the Spoils of War token to pick that up for next turn. Of course, they're 10 Knights with a 2-up, 6-up save, and then they've got defensive 5, so they decide that they're not going to be scared of 10 core dwarves, which I think is a fair assumption. It also puts them out of arc of my King's units, because that's so far forward collecting their token. So, in Magic, he gets Flaming Swords off on the Lion Guard Chariot for rerolls to wound, kills a couple more dwarves with probably Fireball. And then combat, his impact hits and all of his attacks wipe out the back rank, which means that So Unbreakable means that you automatically pass through all your break tests, but combat reforms are still made with all the combat modifiers. So I've been charged in the flank, and I've lost 5 guys there. So even with my Discipline 10, I need to roll a 3 on 2d6 to be able to reform to get my character into the combat with the Lion Chariot. Obviously, I didn't manage that, and they're stuck like that for another round of combat. So we go on to my turn 3 now, this is. So my King's unit with spears have now picked up that centre Spoils of War, and they've marched forward to try and get close up to all of his blocks of elves. My Hold Guardians have turned back around and are marching as fast as they can, now that they've been put back a turn by the Eagle and me being daft, to try and catch up with the Spear Elves. Those Clan Warriors are chasing as furiously as they can after those Knights of Rima, and that last unit of Clan Warriors are also trying to come up cover behind the Spear Dwarves. And on the left, my 10 Spear Dwarves declare a charge against his Knights of Rima, and as I've said, they've got a very high defensive skill, they've got lots of armour, they should be perfectly fine, they won't need to worry about anything like that. Just fight me off and grind me down, and then take the objective in the end. So there's another photo of where I am with my movement. Oh, sorry, so I got a magic off there. I think that's the Rune of I think I must be casting Rune of Gleaming on myself to try and counter his shooting as much as I can. So on the charge here, I've got a charge and a rank, and I think I managed to get 1 wound through against the Knights. They didn't manage anything against me, which meant that I won combat by 3, and then I managed to run him down, which was excellent. Not at all expected, but it really helps me out on this flank. So he dropped his token, and then I ran off to catch him and chase him, so I'll have to turn back around and go and pick that if I want to score with that. And then in this combat, thankfully he didn't have Flaming Swords off, because I managed to get Rune of Revocation off on the Chariot. So I was able to tank enough of the wounds to keep my character alive, and then make the combat reform check, so that for next turn I will be able to attack the Lion Chariot with my Seeker. And you can see there my Clan Warriors have ended up in the forest after they've chased down the Knights of Rima. There's a slightly wider photo of that. There's my Spear Dwarfs being peppered by the Elves. There's a suddenly very crisp photo of my Hold Guardians being chaffed by one of the Eagles. so this must be his turn 4 now. Here is my Spear Dwarf unit bearing down on those elves who are still backing up. So the dragon has flown over the top of my Clan Warriors unit to get slightly closer to the rest of my scoring units to try and pick them off. He's pretty safe with his hard target, and I only do D3 wounds, I think, with a bolt thrower. So he's not got an awful lot to worry about, and I haven't got any combat units that are going to be able to catch him just yet. So he's going to be a little bit brave with his dragon for now. You can see those Knights of Rhymer have backed off further and then reformed in the corner, holding on to their Spoils of War token. So he casts a couple of fireballs, he gets Blaze off, he might have even got the old Cascading Fire off against this Bolt Thrower, and he manages to kill it. This turn the shooting is really brutal because I've moved into short range with the elves, so they take off almost 2 ranks worth of dwarves now. Of course, as soon as the Dragon Seeker touches the chariot, the war chariot explodes horribly and dies a terrible, terrible death. And so now this is my turn 4. My dwarf unit in the centre is finally close enough to his character bunker to charge in. So he's got his BSB and his general in there, and a champion. So the plan is just get my character in there, get my king issuing challenges, and then start chopping through the characters, try and get some points that way. I've got the Rune of Gleaming on there to try and keep my spear dwarves alive, and I've got Revocation to stop him from casting any buffs for next turn, his combat unit. I move my Steam Copter over to try and get some shots off, cause a panic maybe on these guys, but of course Steam Copters have flaming attacks, they've got a 2-up armor save followed by a 2+ Aegis, so it's very much a long shot. Finally I deal with the eagle there. I can't remember whether I charged it or not. I think I must have just shot it instead with the Steam Copter. And that's after combat, so even with distracting and hard target up on my spear dwarves, he manages to chop through with his lord and his BSB and the big unit. They chop through the rest of my unit, leaving just my runesmith, my BSB, and my king on Warthrone behind. The king on Warthrone did issue a challenge. His champion very rightfully accepted, and then my king exploded him. Made him a terrible mess. Thankfully, though, that has left the spear elves on the left out of line of sight of my characters. They won't be able to flank charge, and I move my Hold Guardians off so that they can potentially counter any charges that he might want to try with. So now onto his turn 5. So he chaffs up my Hold Guardians with his last remaining eagle. Turns his spear elves in towards the centre so they can see both units, and the dragon moves over off to the left. You can see that my spear dwarves are now having to make a little bit of a journey back towards that counter to try and pick up the Spoils of War token. And in my previous turn, the Dragon Seeker and his last remaining Seeker had moved over to try and catch the dragon, but of course, with light troops and flying, he's definitely going to outmaneuver me for the rest of the game. His Knights of Rhymer. So this must be his turn now, so his turn 6. This is his final turn. Is it his final turn? It is his final turn, yes. His turn 6, he charges his Knights of Rhymer into my Steam Copter to try and get the points from that. There's a slightly prettier picture of the eagle chaffing my Hold Guardians, and the Fire Mage casts Fireball and Cascading Fire and Blaze and all sorts on my Seekers because they've only got an Aegis of 6, so if he can get any wounds on them, then he's going to kill them. He's left the Dragon Seeker there on 2 wounds, and after Fireball, it's dead. I managed to pass the panic on the dwarves there though, because I think they're in range of Discipline 10 of my general, and either way they've got Discipline 9 themselves, so they're good. In combat, my Runic Smith falls foul of the hundreds of Sea Guards sitting in front of him. He dies, My BSB is left on 1 wound, and I think I fight a combat with his BSB. His BSB manages to get a single wound through on my king before my king flattens him as well. Again, D3 wounds with 4 attacks and wounding on 2s. Some of them are going to go through, and then he's going to pop. I should note that because I've lost all my scoring unit there, I have dropped that counter there. So it's now 1 token being held by the Knights of Rhymer on the right side. My Hold Guardians charge in to the Eagle and make the Eagle disappear, presumably. No, this is my turn 6. So turn 6, my Hold Guardians charge into the Eagle. The Clan Warriors charge in with the Knights of Rhymer. If one unit can wipe out a unit of Knights of Rhymer, maybe this can happen as well, and that'll take him off the objective, and we'll be drawing that instead. After combat, the Steamcopter has been killed, and I've lost 2 dwarves. I make my panic check, but I'm not chasing him down, unfortunately. So that's him stuck where he is. Of course, the Hold Guardians take care of the Eagle, no problem. His Elf Lord manages to do 2 more wounds to my king before I manage to get a single wound through his armor save, and then his 4+ Aegis. He's only got 3 wounds, but I do multiple wounds D3, so with the final roll of the game, I managed to roll a 6 and do the full 3 wounds to him, and kill all 3 of his characters. Oh no, sorry, both of his characters then. There goes the Eagle, and there's a picture of the final board as we're working out the points. And there's the final score. So, I think I managed to take it on points. Yes, so I'm 400 points on 400 up on points, which takes it to 11-9, and then of course he manages to hold the secondary objective. So that switches it back round to an 8-12. My king managed to take up all 400 points of both his general and his BSB, plus the general's points and the BSB's points and the champion. So I think that was a full 1,500 points the king earned me by himself. So I really owe, you know, all the points that I got this game to the king, just making his way through those challenges at the end of the game. I think in hindsight, when he chaffs my Hold Guardians right at the start, I would have been much better off just simply charging it rather than trying to move around it instead, because it leaves them a turn behind, and it leaves him with the chaff ready for use next turn. But I mean, you know, again, hindsight, and it's a lesson learned for next game. And I'm pretty pleased to have won on points still, despite losing the secondary objective. It's not too bad going. So, thank you for watching again. Game 4 will be against dwarves, I believe. So we'll be having a dwarf off. 2 very different lists. And I will catch you in the next one.